but Israel forms as Babylon forms. So, so let's have a look at, let's break this up into three sections. So we have non-prophesied events that have already occurred. We have, and then we're looking forward in the immediate future into perhaps a mixture of prophesied and non-prophesied events. The non-prophesied events is perhaps my way of bridging the gap between the way the world is prophesied to be and the way it is today. And then we'll move into a set of prophecies, a set of events that are prophesied in the Bible. So we've got to get from the non-prophesied world, if you like, that we live in today to the prophesied world. So in World War I, we had the United Nations form, and the League of Nations, sorry, not the United Nations, the League of Nations form, and the at the same time in 1917, or 2 years before, in 1917, a Jewish homeland became available. The British pushed out the Turks, and through the aid of Anzac soldiers from Australia, I might add, and elsewhere. And so for the first time in perhaps just less than 2,000 years, Jewish people were able to come to Jerusalem to live in large numbers. So in that 1917, the Balfour Declaration was signed, where it was proposed that a homeland for the Jewish people be set up in what is called Palestine, which is actually the land of Israel. And during this time, Jewish immigration into the land of Israel greatly increased. Now, because the Turks were preventing the Jews from getting there, so the British, when they forced the Jewish people out, allowed greater immigration into the land, at least initially, until the British started to harden their hearts. And because of that, perhaps we have World War II. The aftermath of World War II was not only the Holocaust, but Britain lost her empire, essentially. So also after World War II, we have the United Nations come about. So after the terrible Holocaust, and which was terribly traumatic, put mildly, the State of Israel came into being in 1948. And it was the first sovereign Jewish state in modern history. We hadn't had anything like that since the time of Yeshua, and up until about 70 AD. So during that time period, the Jewish people had control of West Jerusalem. They didn't control the east; that was still occupied by Jordan. And in 1967, about 19 years later, the Jewish state was invaded, and they repelled the invaders, the Arab invaders, and gained control over East Jerusalem. So Jordan was effectively pushed out of East Jerusalem and what's called the West Bank, which is actually to the east of Israel. It's not actually the West Bank, it's the East Bank of Israel, but it's the West Bank of Jordan. It's the mountains of Judea and Samaria, so it's actually the heartland of Israel. And the Golan Heights were also gained. And then we come to some events that are ahead of us, and one of them will be the decline of the United States to a point where the lost tribes that are living here and elsewhere are going to have to leave. And so things are going to have to be turned upside down here in the United States in order for that to occur. So one of the aftermaths of World War III, I believe, is the establishment of last days Babylon as recorded in Zechariah 5, which we'll look at briefly later in this talk. And the USA and world order collapses under economic collapse and civil strife and war and so forth. And that gets us that gets us rather motivated to head out of Dodge. And during this same time period, Esau sets his nest amongst the stars, and we'll talk about that. That's prophecy in the book of Obadiah. And the 10 lost tribes leave the United States of America for the North Country. We're told that the lost tribes or the house of Israel was in the North Country, and from there they'll be regathered. So they first have to get to the North Country. So we're going to have some events that get the lost tribes that are awakening to Torah here in America and get them to this North Country, and we'll talk about where that is later. So that's an inferred event, and so if they leave the United States, most likely next destination is the North Country. And during the same time, the secular state of Israel collapses and is replaced by a religious Jewish state, or what would be more correctly called the state of Judea. And then we're going to enter into a time where things get rather supernatural. We're going to have the Nephilim that will mingle themselves with the seed of men, as discussed earlier. And the house of Judea will join with the 10 lost tribes of the house of Israel in the North Country. Now, these events may happen about the same time. I don't have the exact sequence of events nailed down. There are some things that I know are before the tribulation, but there is some speculation into what order these events will go in. But essentially what's happening, if we look over time, is that the world is uniting under a banner. First it was the League of Nations, then the United Nations, then it'll be last days Babylon, and then it'll be this empire of miry clay and iron mixed together, which is really human and non-human. And then we have a united Israel and Judah that returns to the land of Israel from the North Country. And a pre-millennial Davidic kingdom is established according to Amos 9:11, which possesses the remnant of Edom. And this is a big reason why this must happen before the tribulation. I'll explain this later. And the temple and priesthood will be in operation, and this is alluded to through the raising of Lazarus mentioned in John chapter 11. Again, I'll talk about that briefly later. I've talked about that on other talks. So for the sake of time, I hope to get through this quickly. And we're going to have the Gog-Magog invasion, and that's going to have to occur before the tribulation also, after the house of Israel and Judah are brought back to the land. And we'll look at that soon. And we're going to enter into a time of prosperity. So let's have a look. And World War IV and the restoration of all things. Let's look at the events surrounding what we have termed World War III and IV and their relationship to Israel and Babylon. Let's also look at the scriptures related to the house of Israel dwelling in the North Country. Thus, there must be some changes that bring the lost tribes of the house of Israel to the North Country. So in order to leave the North Country, we must first be there. And so that's why we know that the restoration of the house of Israel to the land of Israel can't occur now. It's not going to happen now. The process may be beginning now in that we're beginning to awaken to the Torah and the feasts and Sabbath and so forth. We've got a long way to go. And it may be that the North Country is used for us to dot our I's and cross our T's. The North Country is not so far from Israel, as we'll discover soon. In particular, let's focus on those prophecies related to the rejoining of the house of Judah to the 10 lost tribes of the house of Israel in the North Country and their subsequent regathering from the North Country to Israel. So we're going to have a look at some scriptural references to this thing called the North Country, or Eretz Zephon in Hebrew. So let's get into it. Okay, so God brings out the 10 lost tribes of the house of Israel from the United States of America? No. He doesn't bring us out of the United States of America and plonks us in Israel. It's not going to happen. It says in Jeremiah 23:7-8, "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, The Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country, and from all the countries whither I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land." So when people keep Passover today, we look back to Egypt and the great deliverance that Moses brought. But there's going to be a time when Israel comes out of the north country and the Egyptian exodus is forgotten. Now that was pretty supernatural. I mean, I saw Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments, and if it was only a tenth as good as what he showed, it was something to remember. But this Exodus is going to be so much greater. It's going to eclipse what happened in Egypt. The Exodus that comes from the north country is going to eclipse and the Exodus from Egypt, and the Exodus from Egypt will be forgotten in comparison to this greater Exodus. In Jeremiah 31:8, and Jeremiah chapter 31 is the chapter that talks all about a new covenant will I make with the house of Israel and Judah. So there is the only place in the Old Testament where it mentions specifically a new covenant that God will make, and that new covenant was made through the blood of His Son. "Behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coasts of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child together. A great company shall return thither." So praise the Lord from that. So here it says that two is a witness. We need two witnesses. Well, I've already got two scriptures that talk about the regathering of Israel from the north country. And these aren't the only scriptures. And where is the north country? We're going to look at that in a moment. In Jeremiah 46:10, we read the same prophet uses the same term, the north country, and he says, "For this is the day of the Lord of hosts, a day of vengeance, that He may avenge him of his adversaries. And the sword shall devour, and it shall be satiate and made drunk with their blood. For the Lord God of hosts had a sacrifice in the north country by the river Mississippi." No, by the river Euphrates. So now we actually know whereabouts the north country is. If it's the same north country that's mentioned elsewhere in Jeremiah, this north country is by the Euphrates River. And let's have a look at where that is, because it's not in Tennessee.